Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and it's lovely to have you join me. Are you living in harmony and alignment with your thoughts, values and feelings? Well, that's a topic we're going to be talking about today with my guest, Susan Lazar Hart. She's just written a book, Breaking Free, Your Unique Path to Fearless Living. So we're going to be talking about those topics today. And Susan Lazar Hart is a transformational mindset coach, author, mentor, and motivational speaker who has helped thousands of creatives around the world to find harmony in the inevitability of change. Her expertise in smoothly navigating change draws from her own struggle with heavy metal poisoning, which dampened her vibrant life and sparked her studies of homeopathy, body awareness, and quantum physics. Combining these and other modalities, Susan established the Congurent Life Method as a guide to recognizing limiting beliefs, build a powerful mindset, and confidently call in abundance. Her newest book, Breaking Free, Your Unique Path to Fearless Living, empowers her readers to create lives they genuinely love. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Susan. It's lovely to have you join me on the Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your title. Yes, let's live well.
That's right. And it's not just about living well physically. For me, life is there's so many ways we can live well in life, and it's just a matter of trying to, as you say, align our thoughts, values and feelings, which I'm looking forward to talking to you about today. So we're going to be talking about a couple of things today: the Congruent Life Method, which I haven't heard of before, and also your book, the Breaking Free, Your Unique Path to Fearless Living.
Yep.
There we go. So before we do get started, I will put all links in the show notes so people can find your book and any other work that you do. So let's get started. And why don't you tell me and the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you came to write Breaking Free?
Well, thank you so much. Actually, it started when I was 19. I actually was living in Nueva, which is part of Egypt, and which is now part of Egypt. And I traveled with my paints and papers and everything. And this was a painting, an illustration I did of how I was feeling. And the reason why I speak of that at 19 is it's so important for us to keep those touchstones. Be aware that throughout our life, there are threads that like lead us, that we follow. And it's so important not to negate any of it. And so I guess about a year ago, I was biking with a friend and I said, I got to get that book out because I don't want it to be 2024 and for me to still be talking about woulda, coulda, shoulda. And that's so important, I think, for women living well, is that never mind the woulda, coulda, shouldas. What is it that's calling you, that is really tugging at you? If you actually sat with it, would give you more of you. And that's really what breaking free is all about. It's breaking free from all the belief systems, all the sense of, oh, I wish I could have, all the sense of who am I, right? We know from the age of like 0 to 6 or 7, everything's formed for us. We're told who we are, what we are, when to pee, when to poo, when to eat. And we start to believe that all of that is true for us. And we kind of take that into our adulthood, and we never actually break free from other people's opinions, other people's standards of what we should be like. And so I wrote Breaking Free with the idea of what is it that I can impart to people about themselves, where, one of the chapters is breaking free from the mold you were born into. Another chapter is, are you listening to your life? I mean, when was the last time people actually listened to the lives that they're leading? And so that's what led me to writing this book, was number one, thinking to myself, okay, what is it that I came here to be and do? I was a painter for about 30 years, and I loved it. I was a professional painter and print maker, and all of a sudden one year I realized, oh, I lost my hair, my eyebrows, my eyelashes. I created heavy metal poisoning. And so it really put me back, because I decided, well, I'm a painter, I know who I am. And so really diving into, well, if I'm not a painter, if I'm not a printmaker, who am I? And so I started investigating alternative ways of being, body, mind, and soul. And again, looking at, well, what is it that congruent living is all about, right? So congruently, a perfect example of congruent living would be that I've had this painting all these years, and when the publisher said, let's work on the cover, I said, no, I know what we're doing. We're going to go back there and put this up here. And that's, again, congruent, living congruently is about having everything in harmony. Not saying, okay, I got this part and I can put up with that part. No, no, no. It's breaking free your unique path to fearless living. Yeah.
And while you were just talking about that, then I was thinking how we get so caught up in what society and others suggest that we should be doing, as you say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But you're on social media, which, can be a positive thing, but it can be a negative thing as well, because you're getting so many conflicting stories coming at you of how you should be, or this is what you should be, or then next week it's changed to that's how you should be living. And we tend to get so confused and move away from who we are ourselves as an authentic person. And I was just thinking about you talking then, and the fact that you had identified yourself as a painter, and then when that was taken away from you, it was, well, who am I? And I think for a lot of us, we get we put labels on ourselves. It might be you've had a career for so long and then you retire and you think, oh, who am I? What have I got in my life? Or you might be a homemaker or a mother or something. You have all these labels, but you don't have the label for you as the individual. So I wanted to actually talk about, now you say, I just wanted to bring this in too, that you talk about your book and you say that it's yoga for the mind. And I just wondered if you could expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, that actually wasn't, it was a comment somebody wrote on Amazon.com under the reviews. They said, this
Mm,
is like yoga for the mind. And when I read that, I was like, oh. So one of the things I love about the way the book is constructed is after each chapter, I have a journaling experience, and there's a bit of a meditation, and it's really about going inside. And I think that's what she was referring to, that after each chapter, I encourage the reader to take this moment for you.
mm,
And I have questions, because I'm all about living in the question of your life. I have questions at the end of each chapter that I really encourage the reader to go through, and it's about self-reflection. It's not about
mm,
holding a mirror up to anybody else or deflecting anyone else. Really, true change comes from the inside. It's about being at one with you. And so I think when she said it's like yoga for the mind, it's because we're so busy, just like you so beautifully put, taking in all kinds of information. We're just like boom, 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 and it's Facebook and it's Netflix and it's this and it's that. And as you say, do this week, no, do that this week. Whew, our mind is not created for that. What's happening is, which is a totally different topic, is we are retraining our minds to just not pay attention and focus. And so what this book is doing is encouraging you to take a breath and focus one chapter at a time and learn about you from the inside out. Because we all know all of these things that are being offered to us, it's almost like the commodification of our brain so that we can then be controlled. Again, topic for another time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so easy to my daughter says to me, sometimes I have things and I go, oh, I can't remember what I was going to say. And as you get older, I'll be 67 this year. So you sort of think when that happens, oh, I wonder if there's something more to it. And she said, Mum, you've just got a busy mind. And I think that's what we all do because, we've got everything coming at us in this technological age that you can't turn around without being bombarded with something. But just before we move on, the thought that I had with the yoga for the mind was flexibility.
Yes.
And the thought that perhaps we need to be more flexible in our thinking. We need to let go of just those rigid stereotypes that we've lived with for all our lives and be more flexible and open to, what life has to offer. And I think we also know deep inside, I call it gut feeling, but when you're not feeling balanced, when you're not feeling good or you're doing something and you're thinking, I really hate doing this, but I've either got, I have to do it or I should do it or whatever, rather than doing things that fill you with joy and fill your bucket. So let's talk about, having this fear. How do we overcome and embrace change? Because that's really what we fear, isn't it, the most? Making those changes.
And the thing is, the truth is, fear is a chemical reaction inside of us. And it was created for like when there's loud noises or when you have to run away from the fire. And so what's happened is we've gotten so used to say, oh, I'm afraid of change. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. Again, all having to do with when we were very little. And you might have run into your parents' room and said, oh, there's something under the bed. And they said, don't be afraid. Well, you had an awareness that there probably was a ghost under the bed because little kids don't have they don't have a filter like we do. And you were told, don't be afraid, or, don't be afraid for any kind of emotion. And so then here we are as adults and we're saying, well, I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. So what I have people do, there's so many ways to play with this. The first is to just get very present with what it is that you decided you're afraid of. And I would say just tap into your body. Where are you feeling it in your body? And let's go from there. At what age did you start feeling that? Because it's not about discounting that you decided there's a fear of change. It's more about getting underneath what is it that had created that fear. It could be the parent you lived with who themselves did not like change. And so they embedded that within you. And so once we just start to play with that and discover that, there's a sense of peace. And then I would encourage you to ask yourself, if you choose this, whatever this is you've decided you're afraid of, if you choose that, go out 6 months. I'm so happy and grateful I am, whatever that is. I'm writing this book. Right? I'm so happy and grateful I've chosen something different. Get a sense of what that feels like. How expansive is that? Is that joy-filled? Is that yummy? And then bring that into the present and then start with your first best step. Your best step could be, who do I need to contact? It could be, what do I need to let go of? It could be, just being present with, I am the change that I'm asking for. And it also has to do with, again, we don't give ourselves that space, that time to really indulge in what would be fun. What could this change create? Does this change align with my values? Does it align with who I'm asking to be in the world? If it doesn't, don't go for it.
And I do think it's important about, that we don't make enough time. A few years ago, I was reading an article or listening to a podcast, and it was actually a couple, and they would slot in, I think, maybe every 3 months and go away for maybe a week or a long weekend or something and just work out where they were as individuals and as a couple, what they wanted going forward, and just sort of drawing that line in the sand and actually just not doing anything else but focusing on their own needs and what they and desires and what they wanted. And I think that that's so important. And you're right, we don't make the time. We've got so many things that we can always put in front of us, and our own needs, that we just don't make the time to stop.
Yeah.
And we sort of feel, oh, I should be doing something. But what we don't understand is that by stopping and reflecting and pondering and, coming into ourselves, we're going to be moving forward if we do that. So you've got to stop before you can move forward.
And create the space.
Yes.
I always say how you start your day is how your day begins. So if you put into your day, at the beginning of your day, a space to be with you, and whether that's doing some meditation, whether that's going for a walk, whatever that is, before you turn on all the noise, most people, the first thing they do is they reach for their phone. Well, what you're doing is you're training your mind, you're training your brain to want that phone. It's called constant space repetition. So if instead you let your phone over there and you get up and move, welcome the day. For myself, I do a bit of meditation. I work with my Akashic records. I write what are my guides telling me today, and I have a little book. And then I move, go for a walk, whatever that is. And that's how my day begins. Because I'm inviting the day in. I'm not letting the day take over. And even when my kids were really little, I would get up at around 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go to the gym and go for a swim. And get back just in time. So because I knew that unless I was willing to gift myself, when you go on an airplane and they say when the what are they called? The oxygen masks come down, put it on you first before you put it on the people next to you. Well, it's the same thing with your day, with your life, with your living. It is you first, because you're not good. You're no good to anyone if you're not willing to gift yourself the time to actually, what would I like to focus on for today, and play with that.
Yes, because we're so busy looking after everybody else's needs. And I don't really know how long it will take us to change that mindset and that narrative, because it's been so ingrained for so many years. But hopefully talking about it now might help future generations to, learn a little bit earlier about how to live their life more fully. So I want to talk about the Congruent Life Method. You've touched on it a little bit, but can we sort of delve a little bit more into that and what it actually means and how we can go about achieving it?
It's, I always say the Congruent Life Method is for people who wake up in the middle of their lives going, is this all there is? Because there's somewhere where you're living incongruently. You're not in harmony with, who you thought you'd be at this stage of life, whatever stage of life it is. And so it's really about taking an aerial view of your life, and whether it's health, finances, relationship, and ask yourself, how am I doing here? What's working for me and what's not working for me? I'm a big proponent of getting it out of your head and putting it on paper. And so, what's working for me in my relationships? What could be kids, could be parents, could be whatever that is for you. could be partners, could be boss, whatever you're in relationship with, what's working for you with your finances, what's working for you with your health, what's working for you with your lifestyle. So if you're looking at all of that and then ask yourself, okay, what isn't working for me here? You'll quickly see what you are congruent with, what's matching and aligning with your values, and what actually you can let go of. My next question would be, which one of these is a priority for you to shift and change? And actually, I have a gift for your audience. If you go to susanselfcheck.com, I've created just a self-assessment for yourself to go in and see where you are in your life and your living, just like I'm talking about. Because if you're not living congruently, if you're not living in harmony, you're going to resent part of your life. You're going to neglect part of your life. And our life is not in parts and pieces. Again, you're the pebble in the pond that keeps moving, keeps those ripples going. And that's what congruent living is all about. It's about living in harmony in everything you be and do. And again, it's important to check in on your values, on where you are in your life, where you're asking to be, and seeing what aligns. What are you doing that's aligning with creating a life you love?
Yes. And with that, also thinking, think about your values and your feelings, and you might have been on one path and you think, oh, yep, this is me. And then you get down a little way and you think, I don't really think this is me. So there's no harm in sort of either walking back to find another direction or changing direction, is there? Because you may not find who you are and what you want immediately.
You
so
don't
you
know
might have
unless
to
you
try different things. Yes, yes.
Exactly. And the thing to remember is we were given the gift of choice. We have choice. When somebody says, I don't have choice, well, that's a choice. Right? We are given the gift of choice and also the willingness to be in the question. Be in the question of what you're asking for. Most of us were taught to look for an answer, to show proof that this is going to work out. How do you know? Well, ask a question. Right? Does this fill me with joy? How does this feel? And it's about, yes, letting go of whatever it is. And that's why in the book I write, are you listening to your life? It's always important to tap in and listen, because we do shift and change all the time. So what might have worked for you before, it doesn't satisfy your needs anymore. So what is it that you're asking for? From the present to the future. Whatever
Yes,
yeah.
Go on.
No, I was going to say, because whatever you're holding on to that's keeping you out of alignment is holding you back from being you.
And the other thing I was thinking of as you're talking is that we can change without ourselves realizing that we're changing. And that's because of external influences. And just an example is I'm in a book club and we've been reading classics, and that's mainly all we read. And some of the books we read when we were younger, and we've reread them now, and we're in our 50s and 60s, and you have a totally different perspective on the book, or understanding or appreciation of the characters now later in life than when you were younger. So life does provide us with some wisdom as we get older. It's and it's never too late to make the changes.
No. I love that you're in a book club. One of the things, I have the Congruent Living Academy, which is a membership academy. And one of the things I do is I send the members every 4 months what I call a wisdom book for their library. And the one that we're just finished reading, is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And one of the things he talks about is being impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Not take anything personally. Those are the 4 agreements. Now, I remember reading this during my hippie days. And now I'm reading it with this group, and there's so much more. The idea of being impeccable with your word is being impeccable with your word to yourself.
Mm.
And yes, I agree with you 100%. Rereading what we took for granted, we're also not that person anymore.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, it's a couple of the other. There's only 4 of us in the group, and the others all really said the same thing. Oh, I read this when I was at school or when I was whatever thing, and that character, this is how I felt about them. But now that I'm older, life experience and so forth, I can have a better understanding and appreciation of that person, who they are, why they behave that way. And so, life can give us some positive experiences and wisdom as well, as long as we're open, I think, and open-minded and welcoming to different ideas.
And you know what? Just adding to that, it's also the wisdom of knowing what compassion can create. And so as we move through the years with an open heart, again, whatever you're holding on to holds you back from being you. If you're willing to be with compassion for who you were, who you are, and where you're asking to go next, it totally changes your sense of being and your sense of self. Would you agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And also, I was thinking about, living in harmony.
Yeah.
And that's got to be great for your health.
Yes.
Because if, and you just not just your mental health, but your physical health as well, because living in harmony, you have that lovely calm feeling. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have the different emotions that come with life. We're not robots. We have feelings and we react or, to certain situations. But trying to get that level where we're feeling that calmness and that just well-being must manifest itself in a healthier lifestyle, both mentally and physically.
Well, we do take everything in. And that's why when somebody says they're afraid of something, I'll say, okay, where are you feeling it in your body?
Mm.
Because anything that contracts us, we're made with all these beautiful organs and all of these yummy things in our body. Well, when our heart contracts, we contract. And so it's about opening up that space. And yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be
Yep.
uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. And there's no reason to back off when it's uncomfortable. If you're willing to go into the future and ask yourself, well, how will this feel if I actually do change this? How will I feel about myself? And that's a huge question, because it really, if you're willing to ask that question about yourself with compassion, there's no judgment there. It's just,
Yes. I was just going to say too, you're saying, how will I feel if I change? But also, how will you feel if you don't? And you
yeah,
know that you need to make changes. How are you going to feel if you don't try?
absolutely.
In 5 years' time, are you going to be saying, I wish I'd done that, or whatever? And, change or doing anything new is uh, frightening, and it does take courage to make that, because there's so many things, like I always say, this is an example. I've got 2 examples for myself where, I wanted to be a personal trainer and a group trainer, and that was in my late 50s. And I applied and they said, oh, you're probably a bit old.
Oh,
And I accepted that.
yeah,
But then when I was 63, I thought, no, I still want to do that, so I'm
yeah,
going to do it. So I
yeah,
went ahead and I did that and got the qualifications. But
yeah,
if I'd listened to myself and as a reaction to what these others were saying, I would never have done that.
yeah,
Um, and also another thing is the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, you want to try something new and people will question, well, why do you want to do that? Why do you think, who's going to listen to you, for example, with a podcast? Who's going to read your book? Who's going to do this or that? You've got all these negatives coming at you. And then to have the courage to say, okay, well, I've heard all of that, but I'm still going to push through because this is what I really want to do. It takes courage to do that. It takes courage to press a button to go live. It takes courage for you to write a book and put it out there. You know, but once you do, you just feel fabulous. And if I hadn't started the podcast, I wouldn't be meeting the fabulous women that I do, like yourself and all the others that I've interviewed who have wonderful stories and life experiences to share. So you've got to really push through those barriers.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I would say, what lens are you looking at your life through? Right? Are you looking at through the lens of shame, blame, regret, judgment, other people's points of views? Or you want to clear up those lenses and look through the lens of joy, self-fulfillment, self-actualization? Because, you know, when it's over, it's over.
Well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you do get older, you start to realize that. But as I keep saying, it's never too late to make changes.
No.
So we've talked about the Congruent Life Method and how we can start. When you have clients that come to you, let's, you know, have you got any tips that the listeners can start with? Like you've got the, I've forgotten actually what it is, but
SusanSelfcheck.com.
yeah, where you can go through and sort of see where you're at.
Yeah.
But you know, how do you approach working with others, and what are some of the guide or a couple of ideas that you could give our listeners today to sort of start doing something from today?
I love that. Thank you so much, because I do work with people privately as well as in the Congruent Living Academy. And the first thing I do when I'm with somebody is ask them, what would you love? Like, what would you love? What is that? You know, what would you love? It's not about can I, should I tried to, it's no, but what would you love? Right? And for a lot of people, they're like, oh, I don't know. They understand, what do you want? And then we dig deep under that for why do you want that? But this really start off with, what would you love? And again, I'm a big proponent. Get a pad, get a journal, whatever that is for you, and write down whatever comes to mind. Right? I would love to be whatever that is. I would love to be whatever that is. I would love to. I would love to. I would love to. And then sit down and ask yourself, okay, which one of these is would I like to focus on? Which one of these is a possibility? Like, I would love to be skiing, and I had my hip replaced, and my thought is, okay, so what about that fall? So I'm like, okay, I could actually go skiing on the baby slopes. If I really wanted to go skiing, I could ski on the baby slopes. It's like, okay, would that be fun? Not really. Okay, check that one out. So again, it's being gut honest with yourself. And when I'm with clients, it's the first thing I say, what would you love? How would that feel? How would that feel? Right? How do you see yourself with that? So take these 3 questions. What would you love? How do you see yourself doing this? And write again, all of them. And then which one of these is really true for me right now? Right now. And then I would ask yourself, what's my next best step here? Like, what do I need to, like for myself, in writing the book, I found a book doula. I know myself well, I work well with accountability. So it's, again, that's being congruent. It's tapping in and say, okay, now this is what I would love. Who do I need to talk to? Is there anybody that I can turn to that could actually assist me with this and help me in my next best step? As a transformational mindset coach, that's what I love doing with my clients. It's just digging in there and saying, okay, and so again, like, brilliant. Who would I be if I did that? And who would I be if I didn't? And just start asking those questions. That's the impetus. Or how would that feel? What would that feel like?
Yeah, and it's like I look at my grandsons who are young,
Yeah.
9 and 6 or 9 and 5, and they don't have any restrictions on their thought. You
No.
know, some days my eldest one is going to be a famous soccer player. You know, if I say, what do you want to do when you grow up? Oh, I'm going to play for such and such and be a soccer player. And the other one has ideas as well. They don't put the restrictions on themselves.
Right.
And I try very hard not to put them and say, oh, that won't happen. You know, it's more like, wow, that'd be fabulous, wouldn't it? But as we get older, or from going back to years how we were brought up, the those little restrictions or big restrictions are there that stop us from just looking at that, what would I love?
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, no, I can't do that, or the negatives are there before we even start.
Yeah.
As soon as someone says to you, what would you love? Your mind goes blank, or you think, oh, well, I don't know. So you know, it's getting deep into that and not putting those blinkers on, maybe just going for the moon and the stars, and then bringing yourself back to probably what you could achieve.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you gift yourself that indulgence, like I always say, indulge it. Okay, you are now doing this. Indulge it. What does it feel like? What does it taste like? Is that truly congruent with your values, with what you're asking to, who you're asking to be in the world? And if it isn't, choose something else. And that's why I really, one of the tips I would say is indulge it, right? Picture yourself. What does it feel like? What does it taste like? And then you'll get a sense of, oh, okay, no, actually, no, or yeah. Like part of my, when you asked me at the beginning about the book, part of my target is to take this book into girls' schools and
Oh,
talk
yes,
to them
fabulous.
about being fearless. Create workshops. I'm actually going to be doing a workshop in Vermont quite soon, and it's a 2-hour workshop on breaking the barriers you were born with, and it's something that we were never invited to do. Again, that deep training of, you look just like your mother, you act just like your father, you look just like your aunt. Nobody asks you about you, right? Nobody says to you, what would you love? They say, here, take this or that. And so
Yeah,
indulge it. Why not?
exactly.
What could that create? Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, what's the worst that could happen? You decide, maybe I don't love it as much as what I thought, but at least you've explored and tried. And the other thing I think too is the way that you say to think of to gift yourself indulgence, and perhaps, you know, you might have a list. You might have got in a flurry and said, oh, I love, or this is what I'd love, this is what I'd love, this is what I'd love. But you won't really get the most out of them if you try to do them all at once.
No,
You know,
indulge.
you've got to, as you say, focus down on one, indulge in that, live it, breathe it, you know, savor it, taste it. And then if that's not for you, well, you can look at other areas. But unless you really focus on one thing, you're really not going to give it the benefit that it deserves to at least work.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I can't say this enough. We were not created to have this multi barrage of information coming in all the time, and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all of that. We weren't. That's we are being retrained to do that, so we don't actually focus. And it is a gift to yourself to take time for you, to be present with you, to savor, right? To savor the experience, indulge in how it feels, and then focus, as you so brilliantly put, focus. oh, well, what would I have to give up in order to achieve this? Or what would I have to let go of? What thought patterns would I have to let go of that I can replace with that good feeling thought? Yeah. And then you become sated in the
Yes.
joy of being you.
Yeah. And that's when you're living your best life, aren't you? You are living well and you're enjoying life as well.
Exactly.
So we're coming to the end of our conversation, unfortunately, Susan. 40 minutes has just flown, and we could keep talking for much longer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I have a question I ask all of my guests, but before I get to that, is there something that I haven't covered that you'd like to mention
No,
before we go?
I think you really dove deep into all different areas, so I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I said, I will be putting the links to your book and your website and everything else we've talked about today so that people can contact you and find more about how they can live a congruent life and also to, break free of their fears. Now, the question I ask all of my guests, and what I love is I've done more than 100 episodes of, well over 100 episodes of the podcast, and I've never had the same answer twice. So let's see if we can keep that going. No pressure. So the question is, what does being a woman living well mean to you?
That's a great question. I would say being comfortable with myself. And I mean really comfortable. So that's no judgments. That's true acceptance of whatever it is that I choose. That's being compassionate to myself for any choices that I've made, past, present, and future. Because the thing is, when we travel the world with an open heart, we then have that for others. We be that light for others that shines for them. And to me, I think of us as infinite beings, little sparks that chose this body for this human experience. I chose this body, this female body. I'm so grateful for her in taking me through all of these adventures and more to come. And so appreciative for this body who's taken such good care of me. And that's part of living well, I think, is appreciation for who we be and what we're choosing. And again, living well is the willingness to just take an aerial view with total love and appreciation of where you are, who you're coming in contact with, what that creates for you. And again, that ripple effect, to me, that's living well. If you can create change, I mean, as a coach, if I can create change, that space of change for other people to choose change, to choose for themselves, then I feel like, I'm living well. Yeah.
Oh, that's a wonderful answer and a great note to finish on. So thank you so much for joining me today, Susan. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, and love to have you back at some point because we've got so much more we can talk about that's going to help all our listeners live well and enjoy life. And so thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to chatting to you again.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been wonderful. I appreciate everything that you're creating here. Thank you.
Well, that was a great conversation with Susan Lazar Hart about the Congruent Life Method, living in harmony and having alignment with our thoughts, values, and feelings, and also her book, Breaking Free, Your Unique Path to Fearless Living. What I picked up on it was the question that we all need to ask ourselves today, and that is, what would I love? Really deep down, think about that, dig deep, and don't settle for second best. And as Susan said, gift yourself indulgence. find what you love and indulge in that. So thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with Susan and that you'll share it with a friend who I know will benefit. That's all we have for today. So until next time, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.